In another world, a cold wind freezes to the bone, a mysterious wind as hard as iron. The protagonist is traveling in his carriage, observing the poverty around him, including rampant murders. He arrives at a city. In this era, the strong prey on the weak. Several people are working, others merely flirting, while some are vomiting from too much beer. Liu Feng, watching this world, thinks he has made a lot of money by reselling around. He is looking for a place to live for a while and then enters an establishment, going straight to the counter to talk to the attendant. As he approaches, he quickly grabs a glass and, without wasting time, asks the attendant to sell him the tavern. The girl is speechless at hearing this out of the blue. The protagonist smiles and asks if it's okay to sell to him. The girl starts to think this person is crazy. After all, the tavern is deserted and he still wants to buy it. In his mind, all he wants is a place to stay. And besides, if he opens an inn in that tavern, it will make a lot of money. He thinks this and again tells the attendant that he wants to buy that tavern right now. The girl gets annoyed and says it's not for sale. The protagonist, frustrated, says he can pay a lot of money for that place. At this moment, two people overhear the conversation. One person approaches saying that if money is no problem, he should just buy a city. Liu Feng turns around startled to see who spoke that absurdity. It was Baron Carter accompanied by his son Fez. The protagonist finds it strange a baron would want to sell his city after all, from what he knows about Carter. He is very wealthy. He thinks this and immediately asks why he wants to sell it. After all, it is his inheritance. The baron remains silent for a moment, takes a deep breath, and says that unfortunately, he is getting old. Moreover, the young ones are not living up to his expectations. He makes a drama saying that he just wants to sell his domain to be able to travel to a big city and retire peacefully. Liu Feng can't believe the absurdities he's hearing and asks how much he wants to sell the city of Xiyang for. Carter gets serious, gives a bizarre smile, and then completely changes his appearance, saying that he is selling for only 100 gold coins. The protagonist is utterly flabbergasted at this price and asks if he is insane. 100 gold coins would be around 4 million sheep. It would buy 500,000 cattle. The protagonist imagines he could have financial comfort for 3 generations with 100 gold coins, so he is not foolish to fall for something like this. The baron asks if it's too expensive, because if that's the case, he can grant a noble title as well. Liu Feng responds that there's no chance at that price. Suddenly he looks to the side and is startled to see a sword pointed at his neck. It was Carter's son giving a sinister smile. He even tells Liu Feng that he should feel honored that Carter wants to sell the city to him, and he still dares to refuse. The protagonist is terrified, as they are forcing him to buy an entire city. The baron intervenes and asks both to calm down because the price can be discussed. He then turns and asks the protagonist how many gold coins he thinks is appropriate for a city. Liu Feng responds that the issue is not that, it's that he doesn't have 100 gold coins. In fact, he doesn't even have 30. Carter gives a huge smile and says it can be for 30 gold coins and immediately says that the negotiation is closed. Liu Feng is in disbelief at this and changes his expression, thinking it's strange the baron accepted just 30 coins, considering it's a city. The baron says he's only making this price because he looked at the protagonist's face and felt he should give a special discount. Liu Feng says that even so, he didn't bring any money with him. Carter responds that it's no problem. After all, he can use one of his treasures. This leaves the protagonist serious, wondering what he means by treasure. The baron then smiles and says that probably inside the boxes there must be crystal cups or something like that. Liu Feng changes his expression, imagining that they had this conversation a long time ago, and apparently the baron has his eye on his goblets. He begins to think that he had to travel tens of thousands of miles in this vast world to get them. He reached one of the most popular and distant stores in the East, the famous Run Yi story. At the time, they were having a special offer, 5 goblets for 10 reais. He even explains that he bought the goblets with the highest bid, and therefore if the baron wants anything beyond that, he won't have it. Carter and his son's eyes light up after hearing that story. The baron immediately begins to admire the goblets and says that he had the privilege of seeing one of them when he was at the Duke's palace, and they were not as clean and magnificent as those. The protagonist can't believe it after all. They are crystal goblets. Apparently the people of that world are easy to deceive. His theory must be right, since both the baron and his son couldn't stop admiring them. Liu Feng can only imagine that, if that was the case, he should have bought more of them, but he can return at least once a day. The baron approaches and asks the protagonist if he has other treasures there with him. This makes him worried, since apparently those bastards want to discover more valuable treasures, Definitely this is not good after all. They could even kill him for the treasures. He, smiling, begins to think that if a goblet is considered a treasure, then his other items will cause a problem, so he must keep them in his storage space. He thinks about this and says that he will open the chest to show what he has. Before opening it, he uses his spatial storage magic, making some of the treasures disappear from inside the chest. After that, he begins to open the chest, leaving the Baron in anticipation of what treasures there might be inside. Liu Feng, smiling, opens it and says that those are his other items and asks if anything interests Carter. Inside the chest were only 2 pots and a cloth. The Baron is frustrated, saying that none of that interests him. The 3 prepare their horses and then begin to travel towards the city of Yang. The protagonist admires the wheat fields near the city, saying they are growing very well. Carter, smiling, says that it is indeed true. Everyone continues their journey while the Baron explains that in that region, one must be careful with horse thieves who appear during the harvest time to steal the grains. As they approach, Carter smiles and points in one direction, saying that there is the city of Yang. Huge buildings could be seen that left the protagonist completely amazed, to the point of saying that it really was worth the price. The Baron coughs lightly and says it's not in that direction. He points again, saying it's in another direction. This completely confuses the protagonist, making him widen his eyes as he looks in the new direction. Carter then points to the correct place, saying that that is the one and only city of Yang. The city sign was all destroyed, as well as the houses. This makes the protagonist cry, since he suspected that. However, with not much to do, they enter the city. His frustration was such that even if it were raining money from the sky, he would not have the spirit to pick it up. They then begin to walk through the city. The protagonist observes a child asking his mother if there is bread in heaven. As he continues his journey, he hears some people calling them leeches, yet other people begged them to have mercy on them. The protagonist just continued on his way until he approached the top of a tower. At this moment, the citizens are furious with the tax values, shouting that the authorities there are leeches. Carter informs his beloved people that, from that day on, his title of Baron will be transferred to Liu Feng. He then smiles and says that this will already happen at that moment. The outraged citizens only ask that the new Baron not increase the value of the taxes, but they are already frustrated, calling the lords leeches. Carter turns to Liu Feng and says that the city is now in his hands. The protagonist looks down, towards the people, and smiles, saying hello to everyone. He tries to make an announcement, but everyone starts to shout, saying that the new lord is a screwed-up person who should leave there. The villagers are enraged, saying all their money has been sucked dry, and they begin to throw stones towards the protagonist. The crowd keeps shouting from the top of the tower. Liu Feng, disappointed with everything, says that now he knows why the wretched Carter wanted to sell the city for so little. The population continues to call the new lord garbage, while Carter nearby yells at some men, saying that a person has been seriously injured and hungry for a week, and yet they couldn't defeat her. The wounded men apologize but say that the person is extremely strong, and frankly, they won't be able to take her with them. Carter becomes completely furious, calling everyone there useless, but soon changes his expression, saying he had an idea. He rides his horse up near the tower and shouts to the new lord of the city, saying he left a secret gift in the castle's prison. The protagonist finds this odd. Carter warns that he should hurry to see this gift, because if he takes too long, the castle will be demolished. Liu Feng becomes desperate, not wanting a precious castle to be demolished. He immediately runs to the castle, wondering what the hell is inside the prison. As he approaches the castle, he immediately opens the doors. There were rats running everywhere, as well as some torches lit illuminating the place. The protagonist proceeds with his lantern lit, wondering who is crazy enough to leave a gift in that bizarre place. He approaches a grate and asks if there is anyone there. As he tries to open the grates, which are padlocked, he notices that all the walls of the grate were collapsing, and this was not good at all. The protagonist immediately dodges, jumping from one side to the other as he sees the grate begin to fall. He smiles, saying he's a professional at dodging and that the grate is crazy to think it can crush him. He says this as it falls in front of him. However, the protagonist changes his expression, saying it's not possible that this has happened, and sees the grate hit right on the tips of his toes. He starts screaming in pain and continues to walk, even with his toes injured. All he can do at the moment is cry in pain, saying that all this is hell. However, he is startled by what he finds inside. Upon seeing pointed ears and a blue tail, he realizes that there was a demi-human in the prison. This surprises Liu Feng, since apparently beastmen really do exist in that world. He tries to wake the girl up, asking if she is still alive. The protagonist notices that she is trying to say something, and getting closer, hears her asking for water. He starts to get worried, and looking at the girl, asks if she is the so-called gift Carter spoke of. He closes his eyes and imagines that he cannot simply do nothing and watch her die. Liu Feng then decides to use his spatial storage ability, making several waves appear in his hand. The waves get bigger and bigger until several items appear in front of him. The items are inside his spatial storage ability, and the protagonist decides to see if there is anything the girl can drink. Then, he sees an energy drink that will probably be very good for the girl. He picks up the bottle and brings it to the girl's mouth. She remains with her eyes closed until she starts to tremble and finally opens them. After that, she spits all the water towards Liu Feng, leaving him completely scared. He asks what the hell that was, but without realizing it, the girl stands up and kicks him in the face, throwing him far away. Blood starts coming from his nose as he asks what the hell is happening. The girl doesn't waste any time and starts to run, jumping in various directions extremely fast. She jumps on top of the protagonist and prepares her huge nails. Liu Feng starts to scream in desperation, asking for help and imagining that now it will be his end. Various memories pass through his head, from when he was younger even to when he flirted with girls. He starts to cry, imagining that he hasn't even snagged a beautiful and rich young woman, and just at the peak of his life. At this moment, he notices something strange. The girl, weakened, faints onto his chest. Relieved, since he seems to be safe now, Liu Feng decides to take the girl to his castle as the sun is very strong that day. After placing her on the bed, he is amazed, not having expected the demi-human girl to be so beautiful. He notices a brooch inscribed with Mina, and thus discovers that is her name. At that moment, all Liu Feng can think about is why Carter had locked this girl up in the dungeon. Just then, Mina's stomach begins to rumble loudly, embarrassing the protagonist as it seems she fainted from hunger. He decides to fetch some rice from his spatial storage to make porridge. However, a leaf flies out of his portal. It drifts out of the room without Liu Feng noticing, floating through the balcony and hitting an old man in the head in the city. The man grabs the leaf, wondering what the heck it is, and then is completely surprised to see what is written on it. He holds up the leaf and shouts for everyone to come over and see what's on that leaf. The porridge is finally ready, and the protagonist begins to blow on it to cool it down a bit. He then brings a spoonful towards the beast woman, placing a bit in her mouth since she needed to eat. Mina gradually wakes up and soon recognizes the smell, wondering if it's coming from the porridge. Suddenly, she opens her eyes and sits up startled. She yells at Liu Feng, saying the smell is coming from him, then immediately extends her claws and grabs his neck, asking what he made her eat. She asks this while preparing to attack if she needs to defend herself. Concerned, the protagonist simply replies that it is rice porridge. The girl leans down to see what it really is, coming very close to his face, which embarrasses him. She notices the beautiful dish and then says that it really is rice porridge. She starts to lick her lips but then changes her expression, thinking she needs to control herself. After all, humans are not kind, as they live capturing beasts. She says this, but then her stomach growls loudly, basically saying she's starving. Mina stands up and tells Liu Feng to eat some of that porridge. He responds that it's no problem, and then turns the dish up to his mouth. He smiles, saying it tastes quite good. However, that does not convince the girl, who starts yelling at him to eat another bite this time. He responds that it's no problem, and in fact, he will eat until there's nothing left. Mina watches the protagonist eat the whole bowl, and then imagines that this human must not really want to hurt her. After all, he has had several opportunities but did not do it. After that, she just asks for more and more bowls until Liu Feng starts to worry, asking if she's okay. Mina responds that she finally got full after eating dozens of dishes of porridge. The protagonist looks at it nonplussed, as the girl ate enough rice porridge for an entire month. Mina starts to find it strange, as humans are not so formidable in that way. She then orders him to let her go, or he will suffer the consequences. He can't believe that the girl just ate all that porridge and now is walking out on him. However, he says that the door is right there, and no one will stop her from leaving. She begins walking towards the door until she hears Liu Feng asking her to be careful outside. He asks her to make sure not to get captured again by some other fool. Mina is puzzled, as this boy is so different from other nobles, especially seeing him smile that way. She becomes thoughtful about this, but then her ears start to twitch, and something catches her attention. Immediately she jumps towards the protagonist, calling him a scoundrel, as there probably is an ambush outside. Mina grabs Liu Feng's neck while saying she's sure there's an ambush waiting for her outside. He starts to cry, as this woman is very suspicious. He gets upset and says he's the only one in the castle, so how on earth would there be anyone there to set up an ambush? And he asks her to stop it since this is the second or third time she's grabbed his neck. At that moment, someone knocks on the castle door. It was the entire town population screaming that the Lord is a bloodsucker and demanding that he open the gate. The girl yells that she won't be fooled this time. He, not understanding anything, says he has no idea what's going on. The villagers start invading the castle, screaming to kill everyone inside. The castle is in chaos at this moment, and the situation worsens when everyone reaches the bedroom door. Several people were ready to break down the door using a handheld battering ram. The two hear all the noise at the door. Liu Feng quickly tells the girl to hide, as he doesn't know what the people intend to do. Mina tightens her grip on Liu Feng's neck, which irritates him, making him yell that if he wanted her dead, she would have been dead a long time ago. This makes her think, as it really is true. After that, the bedroom door is broken down, and then Shinke points forward, shouting that the Lord is there. They start running while he screams not to let Liu Feng escape. At that moment, several people surround the protagonist, pointing various weapons at his face, making him ask what's going on. Someone approaches, shouting for the city's lord. He turns and sees an old man named Ba Fu accompanied by some citizens. He says his people have nothing left, so why would he want to increase the collection tax? Liu Feng shouts in outrage, saying he didn't raise any collection tax. The old man then shows a scroll, asking what this is. The protagonist imagines that it isn't his, and if he remembers correctly, he sold a batch of straw paper to Carter as lamb's skin parchment. After remembering this, he says it's lamb's skin and probably came from the castle itself before his arrival. The villagers shout that this is a lie and that many of their brothers have died from hunger because of these absurd taxes. Everyone gets outraged, saying that the Lord is a devil incarnate. The protagonist is indignant, as all the anger is falling on him, when all he did was sell a batch of paper. The villagers scream, saying they won't let him live, since nobody there is able to live with the absurd taxes. Shinka grabs his weapon and runs towards Liu Feng, saying he will take his life for all this. He begins to worry about the direction the situation is taking. Suddenly, a rock hits Jinki's hand, making his scythe fly away. The scythe says that, according to the law, if any civilian kills someone of nobility, they will pay with their life. He doesn't mind dying but worries about his wife and children. Liu Feng can't believe this. After all, he had asked the girl to hide. Mina turns and asks the protagonist if he's okay. He tries to answer yes, but then the scythe flew at his head after being hit by the rock. Mina bursts into laughter, not believing how unlucky that guy is. Ba Fu interjects, saying none of that matters. He shows the scroll that contains a 50% increase in taxes, so this isn't any different from dying. Liu Feng is still confused and decides to grab that scroll to see what the hell is written on it. He sees that it's a notification announcing a 50% increase in various taxes, such as street, wheat transport, marriage, childbirth, sleep, warming in the sun, among others. The scroll is signed by Carter. The protagonist can't believe these absurdities and gets even angrier when he sees that he was used as a scapegoat by the damn Baron. He shows the scroll and says for everyone to look carefully, since that notification was issued by the previous lord, not by him. People are confused about whether this is really what happened. Shinka starts shouting, saying he doesn't care if it was by the previous lord. After all, they are all from the same group. Liu Feng then smiles. He begins to tear up the scroll and throws the pieces into the air, announcing in his name as the lord of that city that the citizens will never have their taxes increased again. Everyone is in disbelief at what they are seeing. Some villagers wonder if this is true. After all, can a noble's word be trusted? Meanwhile, other people shout that everyone saw the lord tear up that notification, so it must be true, and now they all will have enough resources to eat. Ba Fu looks at Shinke while all the citizens shout, celebrating this achievement. Liu Feng extends his hand, stating that he only wants all the citizens to be happy and that he will guide everyone to wealth and prosperity. He then gets serious and says that for this, they will only need one thing. Everyone must put their dirty hands to work hard for a better future. The citizens find this incredible, even though they don't quite understand what he means. Ba Fu speaks up, saying that if that's the case, everyone is grateful for this kindness. The protagonist confirms, saying it's true and that he never goes back on his word. The citizens comment that they would really like it all to be true and say they need to wait to find out. Meanwhile, far from the city, Carter and his son are talking. Fez tells his father that he heard that the city of Yang has become a complete mess and that they even invaded the mansion of the new lord. Carter bursts into laughter, thinking that the bigger problem would be thieves. Yet Liu Feng can't even control a bunch of peasants, Fez praises his father for the brilliant idea and even says that it's very likely that the city will come back under their control very soon. However, someone arrives at the establishment calling for Carter and says there is bad news, as something has happened. Fez asks what happened for the man to make such a fuss. The man explains that Liu Feng, in addition to persuading the entire population, also released the beast woman who was imprisoned. Fez becomes furious, not believing that the beast woman was released, and says he will kill the bastard Liu Feng. Carter tells his son to stay calm. Fez replies that it's not possible after all. They spent a lot of money buying that beast woman. His father says that either way, there's no need to hurry, since Liu Feng is the new lord of the city at the moment. He also says that in time, Baron Omar will straighten him out. This catches Fez's attention, who is surprised again, saying his father is really a genius. Back at the protagonist's castle, he is lying down after finally managing to calm down, since what happened scared him a bit. He takes a deep breath, saying he needs to calm down a bit more. At this moment, Mina approaches the bed and says that she is also leaving there. This catches his attention, and he quickly sits up, telling Mina that her injury is not fully healed yet. He explains that if she leaves in such conditions, she will be captured as easily as taking candy from a child. The girl gets angry, saying that if anyone approaches, she will just kill them. Liu Feng takes a deep breath and asks Mina to stay a little longer in the castle until she recovers. After that, she can leave. After all, he wouldn't be able to do anything against her anyway. Mina explains that no human is good, so why would he be kind to her? He tells her that it's boring being the only one in that huge castle, so if she stays there keeping him company, they could at least talk to distract themselves. This makes Mina thoughtful. After that, she decides to accept. Since Liu Feng couldn't harm her because of her strength, Mina decides to go to a hot spring in the castle, which was quite warm. She removes all her clothes before entering the water. She slowly enters until she is completely submerged. She is happy, as it has been a long time since she took a good bath, especially a warm one like that. However, her injuries start to hurt, causing her to close one of her eyes and moan a lot. This reminds her of when she was imprisoned and the diabolical humans would appear asking if she was hungry. She was content, saying that she was indeed hungry, but they only gave her a small piece and beat her severely. In the end, she would faint inside the cell. She remembers when Carter bought her for a silver coin. She could not forget the face that had mistreated her for so long. These memories make her furious, and she slaps the water, declaring that all humans are not only disgusting, but also liars. At that moment, the protagonist is watching everything from the door, aware that it is wrong. However, he can't help himself, as he is merely curious to understand the differences between humans and demi-humans. Moreover, he wants to broaden his horizons. He remains infatuated, peering through the door. His eyes continue to sparkle as he observes Mina's beautiful body. At that moment, he falls backward, thinking that it's all too exciting. She hears something, thanks to her extremely keen sense of smell and hearing. She asks who is at the door, having heard something. The protagonist yells out, saying he's there to deliver something for her to wash with. He opens the door further and throws a bar of soap into Mina's hands. She looks at it closely and thinks it smells very nice. She approaches closer and notes that it also has the scent of humans. After that, Liu Feng immediately runs to his room and starts looking at some papers. He begins to flip through the papers to pretend that he is focused on some work. Mina then enters the room, and the protagonist immediately looks forward. The girl feels embarrassed and says that the clothes are a bit short, as they don't fit properly. The protagonist is captivated by such beauty, as he was standing before a freshly bathed Catwoman. This is something he could never see in another world. He can't take his eyes off her beautiful body. Mina notices this and asks where he thinks he's looking. He averts his gaze, saying he's looking nowhere in particular. He points to the side and mentions that he prepared some rice porridge for her. The aroma catches her attention while she thinks it smells very good. She awkwardly thanks him for the porridge but warns that if he's planning something, he'll be in big trouble. He asks her to relax, asserting he would never dare do anything. She then grabs the porridge and makes it clear she'll kill him if necessary, because humans are always scheming against the beasts. Liu Feng feels embarrassed, saying that at least he is different. The girl then sits down and says he really isn't the same. She smiles and adds that this is because he is a human who peeps on others taking a bath. The protagonist is completely startled, thinking he has been caught. And to make matters worse, if people find out, he surely won't be able to live there. She then begins to eat her porridge, thinking it's quite tasty, but she thinks she needs to set the porridge aside since she has something to warn him about. She tells the protagonist that he better start packing his bags, because in a few days he probably won't want to be the lord of that city, and will just run away. The protagonist asks what she means by that. She puts the bowl on the table and says that there are only 20 days left until the autumn harvest, and when it comes, the horse thieves will appear to loot the harvest. She explains that this group of thieves could end up killing him, and afterward, they will take over the castle for themselves and thus become the new masters of the city. Mina mentions that the protagonist doesn't have a single soldier at his disposal and yet isn't fleeing, which means he is there wanting to die. Liu Feng is frustrated to learn this, as it seems he was deceived by Carter. After all, by buying that city and titles, he dug his own grave. Mina stands up and says that it's all so bad it makes her want to travel south. Otherwise, she could stay and watch the foolish humans kill each other. The protagonist asks what she means by that, and also if she, by chance, is afraid of the horse thieves. She yells that there's nothing that can scare her, except the wrath of the ice goddess. The protagonist asks what she means by ice goddess. Mina responds that it's exactly that, and that was the reason for the snowstorm that lasted 5 years. She explains that 5 years ago, the ice goddess suddenly appeared, extremely furious, blowing a freezing wind. Snow fell from the sky, turning the whole world into snow and ice. All living beings had no choice but to head south. After that, some human nations still remain surrounded by all that snow. Mina is surprised that Liu Feng didn't know about this. He laughs, saying he spent a lot of time in the east during that period. Mina finds this interesting, but makes it clear again to the protagonist that he needs to flee soon if he doesn't want to die. He smiles and asks if there isn't still half a month until the autumn harvest, because if that's the case, she doesn't need to worry about him. She then looks back and sees a confident look from the protagonist, who says he has his own path. At this moment, a person named Niu Wu is running from a tiger. He looks back, taunting it, and the tiger, furious, starts running towards him. The chase continues frantically until he jumps and lands on a small wall, still taunting the tiger. At this moment, the animal becomes even angrier and decides to attack the boy with full force, but he manages to dodge in time, jumping to the ground. A man is at the top of the mountain watching this. He starts yelling, calling the rest of his family to help. He yells even louder, saying it's showtime. At this moment, several people appear holding a net to capture the tiger. They are Niuda, Niuer, Niusan, and finally, Niusi. The tiger is taken aback by so many people arriving, but it's too late as the net comes towards it. Everyone is pleased to have made such a great capture. They decide to head to the city, as it has been a long time since they visited it. People comment that the Niu family never returned to the city after Carter's recruitment attempt. Shinke asks what's going on, as it seems the Niu family is entering the city. Meanwhile, Bafu starts to observe the direction they are heading, and then is surprised, imagining they will visit Liu Feng. Shinke yells that this is impossible. After all, even though Liu Feng is a noble who could even invite the king, he wouldn't invite the entire Niu family. Everyone watches that family walking, thinking it's impossible for a bloodsucker monster to invite the Niu family. Two girls who are with the Niu family comment that Liu Feng is probably already a good boy, and even became a noble. They are pleased to receive a letter inviting them all. Apparently, they didn't save the wrong person. Meanwhile, another girl named Nicole is happy because she will finally reunite with the protagonist. At the castle, Liu Feng's screams of joy can be heard, happy to see the entire Niu family again. They throw the tiger on the ground, saying it's a gift for the protagonist becoming the governor of a city. He is amazed by the tiger and starts to ask if it must weigh about 250 kilograms, probably enough to make a fur coat. In front of so many people, the protagonist says that no gift was needed and that just their presence would be enough. A woman asks Nicole if she isn't going to greet Liu Feng. After all, she wanted to see him so much. Her mother tells her to say hi to him. She says this and slaps her on the back, making her trip over the tiger's paw. She begins to fall, but the protagonist moves towards her and catches her in his arms. Nicole's ample chest presses against the protagonist's body, leaving him amazed to the point of saying that it seems she has grown up very well. He gets embarrassed, as his nose even starts bleeding with the perverted thoughts he was having. Meanwhile, Nicole, all innocent, asks if he means she got taller. He, not wanting to be blunt, says yes, that since they haven't seen each other for so long, she seems much taller. Her parents burst into laughter and say that the greetings are over, and now it's time to discuss business. The man calls all his children and asks everyone to make a pledge of loyalty. The protagonist is surprised by this and asks the man if he isn't also there to help, since he was supposed to be the chief administrator of that castle. The man smiles and says he appreciates the kindness. He grips his spear and then mentions that, unfortunately, as everyone knows, his leg is broken, so he won't be of much help. At this moment, Liu Feng snaps his fingers and smiles, telling him not to worry, as he can find a way to make the man a normal person again. This surprises the entire family. The protagonist makes all the preparations, placing a prosthesis in place. He smiles and says it's ready, asking his Uncle Ben to stand up and try walking. The man then grabs his spear and looks serious. He tries to walk little by little. His prosthesis works normally until all his walking is flowing well. His wife begins to cry, not believing that this is happening. Ben is happy, saying he is finally able to walk again. The woman starts to tear up with emotion, while her daughter asks her to be careful since her makeup is running. At this moment, the entire family begins to celebrate, since Ben is walking again, as if by a miracle. Liu Feng asks Ben to practice more often until he gets used to it, so he will soon be walking like a normal person. Ben looks straight ahead and then stares at his wife. The protagonist notices something strange. All the men from the Niu family come towards him with a serious look, which makes him ask what is happening. At this moment, all the men call him young master. They kneel down, swearing an oath that they will be the swords that will pierce all of Liu Feng's enemies. This leaves him surprised, especially when everyone shouts that they will not hesitate to take their own lives if necessary. He then smiles and grabs his Uncle Ben's arm, deeply thanking him for trusting him. The protagonist also tells his uncle that from that day on, he will govern that castle. Not only that, but he will also teach how to manage the entire city. Elsewhere, someone shouts from within an establishment that Baron Omar's letter is arriving. Basically, the plan against the Western Sun City is beginning at this moment. The morning and the sky are clear. In the same establishment, someone is dismayed. A child can't believe they're charging 3 copper coins for half a kilogram of grains. He starts shouting, saying that the day before he was informed that 2 coins were enough. The man then smiles and says that yesterday was one price, but today it's another. He also intimidates, asking if the child wants to buy or not. The child is furious, as he is clearly being cheated. The man with red hair begins to think that this price increase was at the request of Baron Omar, so everyone will be forced to accept it. Still in the city, near the establishment, several people are running because they heard that free food is being distributed, and they need to see if it's true. The child inside the store also hears and says he will not buy anything with this price increase. The man is dismayed, asking what the hell this free food distribution means. Ben continues banging on a can. He announces that they are recruiting secretaries, hunters, and strong men. Everyone will have better conditions. He also passes the values for each recruitment. Secretaries will receive 120 copper coins monthly. Hunters also 120 and strong men 80. Everyone in the city can't believe such a high salary and say that a noble can't be that good. The population begins to shout that this amount is twice what the old noble offered, so they are probably trying to deceive everyone. At this moment, Liu Feng approaches, saying that he will fulfill as promised. Everyone looks back when they hear this. He walks close to everyone and then says he will never break his promises. The sun is getting stronger in the area, and Liu Feng begins to walk among everyone in the city. People are amazed, shouting how handsome the protagonist is, besides wearing clothes that they have never seen in their lives. They look at the beast woman and say that even the demi-human is wearing a quite elegant maid's outfit. Both approach Ben, and the protagonist says he will take over from there. His uncle says that's fine. The protagonist then makes it clear that everything in the announcement is true, but the candidates will need to pass a test first. With a look full of confidence, he informs everyone that they will not only have a great salary. At this moment, a delicious smell catches everyone's attention. He points to the side, saying that they can also eat all that food as much as they want. People approach, saying the smell of that roasted wild boar is divine. Others see a delicious dish that, incidentally, smells very good. The population wonders if they should try it. After all, they have nothing to lose. Shinke, starving, says that it seems everyone is eager, but if it's a trap, it will be terrible. Bafu says it's no problem. If that's the case, he will take the lead and try the food first. The protagonist sits down at a table and then asks who will want to be the first. Bafu quickly starts to jump, shouting that he wants to try. Confident, he says he wants to apply. He then approaches the table and says he wants to try for the secretary position. He even wrote some things. Liu Feng reads the letter, in which Bafu says his dream is for everyone in the city to eat until they are satisfied, in addition to having clothes and a warm place to live. The protagonist finds it interesting, as Bafu not only writes very well, but also cares a lot about people's welfare. He tells Bafu that he passed the test and that, From that moment on, he will be the secretary of the city of Yang. Nicole also immediately serves Bafu a bowl of noodle soup and roasted pork. Bafu starts to drool seeing those incredible dishes and quickly grabs the food, saying that this humble old man will taste it. He begins to eat and his expression completely changes. People are shocked to see the old man's expression and ask what's wrong. Could the food really be poisoned? Shinke grabs a machete and starts to shout, saying that it was indeed a trap. She begins to shout, saying she will save her Uncle Bafu and charges at the protagonist. Mina immediately prepares to defend. However, at this moment, Bafu begins to cry, saying that the food is extremely delicious. Shinke falls to the ground, unable to believe that all the old man's expression was because he was enjoying it and not because of poison. Bafu says he has never eaten anything so delicious in his life and probably lived wrong all this time. Shinke is annoyed with her uncle. After all, he used such a scary expression when he was actually excited. People then start to consider applying for a position. Some want to try to be secretaries, since they are literate, and others want to try for the position of soldier. Nyuta then presents the recruitment field, saying that those who manage to pass all the obstacles correctly will be approved in the test. Shinka observes that everyone is trying something, so probably she should too. The protagonist goes up to the top of the castle along with Mina and Nicole to watch people passing the tests. He says the situation is perfect, as he didn't imagine so many people would be so enthusiastic. The protagonist pats Nicole on the head, thanking her for working so hard to help. She gets embarrassed and says that he taught her well. The protagonist then decides to thank Mina too, but she steps back and shouts that he only needs to speak, he doesn't need to touch her. He gets embarrassed, as he just wanted to thank her. After all, the idea of attracting everyone using food was very good. Mina just steps away saying that's fine, while the protagonist is upset because he almost managed to stroke her ears. Nicole observes and wonders what that girl means to Lu Feng. After all, even though she is clearly a dangerous girl, the protagonist doesn't seem to care about that. Still in the recruitment field, people can only think about the food that will come after they complete it. They proceed with all their effort, passing through the obstacles, but many are failing, causing Nyuta to inform that they are disqualified. A woman gets her skirt caught on the barbed wire and is also disqualified. Climbing a huge wall using a rope also proves too difficult for some, leading Nyuta to disqualify them as well. Ben watches everything from a distance and grows concerned, unable to fathom where Liu Feng sourced all these challenging tests from, considering even his family, who have trained since childhood, would struggle, let alone those who have never trained before. At that moment, people can only complain about how sore their bodies are. This leaves him thoughtful, as if it continues like this, they won't be able to recruit any soldiers. At this time, Liu Feng is reading a book on the art of war. He takes a deep breath, dismayed that so few have passed the tests. Nicole enters, calling for the young master. He quickly looks up at her, carrying his afternoon tea, which includes chocolate and coffee. The protagonist thanks her for the generosity. He looks at the beautiful plate before him and starts eating, commenting that the chocolate is tasty and the sweet is quite light. He turns, complimenting her culinary skills as being truly incredible. This makes her quite embarrassed, pleased that he enjoyed it. At that moment, someone grabs the chocolates until none are left. It was Mina who snatched them all, but she compliments them, saying they are very tasty. Nicole smiles, happy that Mina enjoyed them, but is frustrated since she spent the entire morning preparing them just for Liu Feng, and the Catwoman went and ate them all. Bafu quickly enters the room, shouting that he has bad news at that moment. He is accompanied by Ben and informs them that people are preparing to leave Yang City and are searching for food. The protagonist spits out his tea in disbelief. He sets his cup on the table and then asks what exactly is happening. Ben explains that this is because the people who failed the tests were not allowed to get the food. Bafu also reports that, in addition, opportunistic merchants are selling food at a 30% higher price. He adds that, to make matters worse, civilians are nearly dying from lack of food at this very moment. Ben requests that his young master review the recruitment criteria, as they are too difficult for people. At this moment, Mina interrupts the conversation with a laugh. She comments that even though the courses are so simple, people are complaining. Clearly, humans are very weak. Ben is furious upon hearing this. The protagonist slams his hand on the table, drawing attention. He stands up and states that the criteria will not be lowered. Both are upset by this decision. However, he states that this is not all, as they will address the issue of merchants taking advantage of the people. Saying this, they go straight to the city's merchant, who greets them, asking what they are doing there. Liu Feng asks if he is the merchant who raised the price of food by 30%. Saying this, he moves towards the merchant to kick him and call him a thief. He also states that because of him, the city is in a difficult position, and for that, this fat man deserves a beating. However, the kick is completely ineffective, making the protagonist think that being fat might have its advantages. The merchant states that his role is to supply the food, and people must buy it, nothing more, nothing less. He smiles and says that if everyone finds it too expensive, they just shouldn't buy it. Liu Feng becomes irritated by this, grabs the sword from Ben's scabbard, and then runs towards the merchant, pointing the sword at his head and demanding how he dares to rob the population in such a manner. The merchant is initially frightened, but then smiles and pushes the sword away, asking the city lord to calm down a bit. He looks at Liu Feng and then explains that, according to the law, merchants have the right to set whatever prices they want on their products, meaning the city lord is contemplating ignoring the law. The protagonist asks if this is correct. Bafu confirms that indeed such a law exists. The merchant then starts to dramatize, saying they are humble and honest, only doing small business all in accordance with the law. He then asks what the city lord will do after learning this. Confident, the man feels secure since he has Baron Omar as an ally, so there is no reason for him to be afraid. The protagonist becomes pensive, not having anticipated such complications, and to make matters worse, he realizes he cannot resolve this issue today. He then acknowledges that the merchant will not lower the prices, which is problematic. He turns and warns that when the time comes, the merchant better not regret this decision. The merchant smiles and says that once a price is set, they cannot regret the decision. The three leave angrily, as the merchant bids them farewell. The city's people are desperate, as the prices of everything have soared, and if it continues, they will starve before the autumn harvest. Bafu walks among the people as they complain about the seasonal price increases. He then posts an announcement. People gather around asking what is written: artisans, masons, and stevedores. The wage is 1/2 kilogram of wheat per day. Those responsible for the construction and who are literate will receive a salary 20% higher. People ask Bafu if what is written is true, if they really need so many workers. The old man gives a slight cough and then confirms that the announcement is 100% accurate. If anyone there wants the job, they can start immediately after applying at the city lord's mansion. People get excited, always trusting Lord Bafu, and say they will definitely apply. As the day progresses, Bafu continues to explain the entire project to those who applied. They quickly start working, some cutting wood and others carrying sand. Some are preparing cement, while others are nailing the boards. Everyone is happy to have work. After a while, it is announced that food will be provided, and they should form a line to receive it. The population is relieved, as they will finally eat. Meanwhile, at the merchant's establishment, 2 people are talking to him. They can't believe that in the last few days, no one has bought food. The merchant says he doesn't care and that everyone can starve for all he cares. The man bites his fried chicken and tells everyone to stop talking nonsense. After all, they are just overestimating that young boy. The 2 men say that the problem is that the city lord is giving away food for free to the population, so how on earth will they sell their grains? The merchant raises his hand and says this will last at most 3 days. He smiles and claims that the city lord's food will not last more than a mere 3 days. The men are surprised by this. As if it's true, the young lord is digging his own grave. The merchant smiles again and says he doesn't care about that. When the time comes, they will be on a huge mountain of money. The men laugh, agreeing that it's true. The next day, Liu Feng is in his office, and Nicole approaches to deliver tea. He is very focused on his project. She places the cup on the table and says she has something to say. He asks if something happened. The girl replies that it's great that people are rebuilding their houses and, in return, receiving food. However, unfortunately, the food supplies in the warehouses will not last. The workers, meanwhile, are happy because they each received 1 kilogram of wheat the previous day. When lunchtime arrives, they are informed that there is little food at the moment. A boy informs Bafu that, unfortunately, the grains for distribution have run out. The old man informs that he has already reported it to the city lord, and that he is resolving the matter. Liu Feng is on the balcony of the castle, and Nicole approaches, saying she has something to say. She tells him that, unfortunately, the food in the warehouses is running out, and soon it may not be possible to distribute anymore. The protagonist smiles and says it's not a problem. He will find a way to handle the situation. At that moment, all the workers are outraged because they haven't received food yet, and everyone is starving. The merchant approaches with a smile, asking what is happening there. He starts accusing the city lord of not fulfilling the contract. He catches Bafu's attention and urges him to hurry up and feed the people, as they cannot stop under contract since everyone there is hungry. He says this while pointing to the hungry people. The old man is speechless. The wretched merchant approaches and mentions that it seems there is no more food left. This infuriates the workers, as they are there only for that purpose. Everyone starts shouting while Bafu tries to calm them down, asking them to wait a little longer since they will soon provide food. The merchant seizes the situation and begins to dramatize, questioning if they really ran out of grains, and if the city lord is indeed having difficulties, then they probably need some help. The merchant's henchmen say that if the city lord is having problems, he should just buy more from the markets. After all, he cannot send those people away without paying for the day's work. The people begin to ponder this, and then rebel again, stating that it will soon get dark and they haven't eaten yet. One of the workers starts shouting, saying he worked all day and it appears he was deceived by these leeches. Bafu grows worried, as the people do not understand the situation. He points his cane, questioning what they are doing, rebelling in such a manner. The population grows more furious, questioning if the old man wants to turn against them. The people then charge at the old man, demanding his death, while others plead for calm, reminding that Bafu has done a lot for them, and they cannot be ungrateful. Some try to harm him while Bafu tries to get away. Others try to break up the fight, as they do not agree with the violence. At this moment, someone yells extremely loudly, ordering everyone to stop. It is Liu Feng, accompanied by Mina. He questions what in the world the people are doing. The people are surprised, as the city lord appears before them. The merchant starts to worry about what might follow. The protagonist begins to walk through the crowd and asks what the confusion is about. He yells, stating that those who so eagerly cause trouble do not need to return the next day. The workers grow concerned, as they heavily depend on that job. Meanwhile, Bafu feels some pain in his body while a child asks if he is okay. The merchant, who is nearby, comments that it's good the Lord is present. He inquires when they should start delivering the grains, as everyone there is waiting for dinner. Liu Feng grows furious and starts walking, stating that the grains will be distributed. He just asks for them to wait a little longer. One of the merchant's henchmen questions why the delay, stating everyone is starving and cannot wait even a moment longer. The merchant takes out a handkerchief and starts his theatrics. He begins to cry, saying the people have worked hard all day and still have children at home to feed. Crying profusely, he states that, even disregarding the adults, they cannot forget the children. He adds even more drama, stating that today, for the sake of the children, he is willing to risk everything. So just send someone to his grain warehouse, where there is enough for everyone. The population is amazed by his speech, believing that the merchant truly understands their hearts. The protagonist is furious, as he understands the merchant's plan to force him to buy the grains at an absurd price. He then starts walking towards the merchant, stating that the population does not have enough money to buy the food at the absurd price he is selling it. The merchant, adding more drama, states that in such a time the city lord cannot think about money, but must consider the hunger of the population. He adds that his food is indeed expensive, costing 20 copper coins per kilogram, but it's not easy to face a long journey just to stock and supply resources. He then continues his drama, saying that money is not an issue for the city lord. After all, he cannot expect people to go without food after a long day of work. As the people begin to revolt again, affirming that despite the food being expensive, they have worked hard to earn it. Mina looks worriedly at Liu Feng as the situation continues to deteriorate. Meanwhile, the merchant keeps taunting the protagonist, remarking that nightfall is approaching and he needs to distribute the grains to the people. Everyone stands still, waiting for this moment. The protagonist finds himself running out of options as the merchant continues to fan the flames, suggesting that the city lord does not care about the population, since he hasn't provided food after a long day's work. The crowd becomes increasingly agitated, declaring that they will get food by any means necessary, even if it involves storming the castle and seizing the lord's reserves. They say this, and quickly start running towards the castle, intent on carrying out their threat. Liu Feng can't believe what's happening. Meanwhile, the merchant bursts into laughter, pleased to demonstrate what the population is capable of, and curious to see if it will make Liu Feng more honest in the future. Everyone laughs, thinking their plans are succeeding. However, the crowd stops and is asked to look ahead. Numerous sacks of grain are arriving in the city. The merchant can't believe what he's seeing, while the protagonist and Mina are also surprised. It's the entire new family arriving in the city with many sacks of grain. Ben shouts loudly that the young master's grains have finally arrived, which excites him. The merchant is utterly dismayed, unable to believe this turn of events. Ben kneels down and says that thanks to good fortune, they were able to complete the task they were assigned. Liu Feng smiles but asks his uncle to stand up. The man explains that, thanks to the young master's foresight, everyone was able to leave the city, and thus they were able to purchase the grains. He shows that the requested quantity was successfully obtained. The protagonist then calls Ba Fu and asks him to spread the following orders. He shouts to proceed with distributing grains to everyone. The population is extremely pleased, lifting Liu Feng into the air and tossing him up, shouting, "Long live the Lord, may he live forever." This makes him extremely happy. Meanwhile, the merchants watch from a distance, worried, wondering what they will do now. The man with red hair admits that unfortunately this time they were caught, so they need to wait and see. As night falls, the protagonist is sleeping deeply, exhausted after a long day. At this moment, someone grabs the doorknob, enters the room, and stands before Liu Feng. It's Nicole, who is smitten by the sight of the sleeping protagonist. Through her eyes, he looks extremely handsome even in sleep. She then looks to one side, then the other. After this, she begins to think that she cannot be discovered. Her plan is to give a secret kiss, and she figures this probably won't be a problem. She moves closer to kiss the protagonist, but is interrupted by Mina, who asks what she is doing. Nicole jumps back, claiming she was doing nothing, but Mina finds this very suspicious. The girl asks why Mina moves around places without even making a sound. She replies that it's normal, after all, she is a Catwoman warrior. The noise wakes Liu Feng, who then gets up, asking what happened. Nicole is desperate, trying to justify why she's there. She then explains that she came to the Lord's room to deliver his breakfast. Extremely embarrassed, she says that's the only reason she's there, just to deliver breakfast. Liu Feng thanks her, acknowledging Nicole had a long day. Mina starts eating the cake too and mentions that the issue about the training field is ready. The protagonist is excited, starting the day with great news. He compliments Mina, calling her really his mascot. She leaves the room telling him to just take care of things quickly. Nicole finds the Catwoman's attitude terrible and doesn't understand why Liu Feng protects her so much. Liu Feng tells Nicole that when he returns, he wants fried pork ribs for lunch. She smiles and says it won't be a problem. At that moment, several people are gathered at the training field. A man asks if the food is really free. Another responds that he is sure of it, because the city's lord is true to his word. Ben informs the protagonist that those people were strictly selected according to the requirements he proposed. He then shouts to the future soldiers, saying that the reason they didn't pass the last military selection exam was because they received inadequate training and food. Therefore, he will provide free food to everyone. Additionally, Knight Ben will provide proper training to everyone as a second chance to become soldiers next month. The entire population is surprised by this. The protagonist also makes it clear that those who succeed in the exam will not only get free food. The soldier's entire family will no longer have to pay any taxes. Everyone is in disbelief, as they will be exempt from taxes for life. They pause to think, as they will have food for life and their families will be exempt from taxes as well. This drives all the citizens wild, shouting that the city's lord is amazing and should have eternal life. All they want is for the training to start soon. Liu Feng smiles and says it's time to begin then. Ben gets everyone's attention with his whistle and announces that his sons will be responsible for the training, as they are all highly trained. The sky is clear at the moment, and Ben starts assigning the soldiers, informing some to follow Niuda and others to follow Niuer. After assigning a squad to each son, he looks up at the sky and shouts that the training is beginning. The first boy starts the training by jumping over flaming obstacles, but runs off catching fire. Another starts climbing a rope, but gets frustrated for not being able to move. Two others climb a wall. While one succeeds, the other is disappointed at being used as a support. Liu Feng tries to console his uncle, saying that it looks like he has a long journey ahead training all those soldiers. Ben is furious at how ridiculous the recruits are, and shouts loudly that whoever doesn't finish the day's training will go without dinner. Mina bursts out laughing, always having thought humans were pathetic. Time passes, and she becomes thoughtful, imagining that the time she trained with Ellie were fun too. She starts looking up, wondering how those people must be now. In another place far away, inside a cave, a fire is burning. Fuji is complaining that it has been 7 days since his sister Mina left and hasn't returned. He fears she has probably been captured by humans. He shouts to everyone in the group that something needs to be done about it. Ellie looks intently at her brother and asks what he thinks she can do about it. She starts yelling, saying that in the first place, Mina shouldn't have let herself be captured like a fool. She takes a deep breath and says their priority now is to head south to find more food. Looking at the group, she says it is necessary to do this, or everyone there will starve. Some children are gathered around the fire, hungry. Even a beast woman is there with her child, who doesn't stop crying for a minute. Fuji, outraged, shouts no. He gets angry, saying he won't go south without Mina. Everyone in the group starts shouting too, saying they really can't leave their second sister behind like this. Ellie just stays silent, listening to all of it. The boy then shouts to his group, saying they will kill all the humans and bring Mina back. Ellie asks everyone to stop, but they don't listen. She then gets furious and shouts louder, ordering everyone to return right now. She keeps asking everyone to stop and turn back into the cave. Irritated, she makes a huge leap, jumps over the group and finally lands on the ground. However, her landing was disastrous, causing her to fall face first into the ground. The group feels awkward, thinking she shouldn't make cool moves if she's not good at it. Ellie gets up and turns to the group, saying they need to think a little. After all, to begin with, no one even knows where Mina is. Fuji is aware of this and asks what they can do about it. She takes a deep breath and says they first need to go to the neighboring cities to look for clues. She says this and starts thinking that Mina is an idiot, but as a shadow warrior, she needs to hold on until she's rescued. Fuji walks toward the city, thinking that Ellie insisted on not saving Mina, yet she even had those turbans prepared for when they infiltrate to rescue her. He finally enters the city and notices people destroying their own houses. After seeing this, he notices an extremely good smell passing by. He looks at a cauldron with food being prepared and starts to salivate. He begins shouting that the smell is too good. A beautiful woman who is preparing the food asks if the boy is hungry and invites him to eat a little. If, after eating, he decides to work for Lord Liu Feng, he can receive wheat at the end of the day. He is surprised, as he can eat and receive more wheat. This makes him think, as his group is starving. Immediately, he shouts that he wants to help. He starts working like crazy, carrying wood everywhere, and doing whatever was necessary to help. The end of the day arrives, and everyone lines up to have dinner. He receives a small bag of wheat and is extremely happy, finally having something to eat. However, his eyes start to close as his body is weak from all the work. He falls to the ground, thinking he needs to leave since his group needs him, but his eyes keep closing more and more until it's completely dark. Suddenly, he wakes up and gets up, shouting that humans are dangerous. He starts looking around and notices there are no humans nearby, and he's lying in a bed. He gets frustrated, realizing he was discovered because his horns are exposed. At this moment, the pink-haired woman enters the room, saying he fainted from hunger because he ate too little. The boy desperately shouts, asking if it's the woman from earlier again. Fuji gets up, scared, asking what the woman is planning. She introduces herself, saying her name is Laner. The boy starts trembling, asking her not to come close because he is a demi-human. He begins to shout that if he gets angry, something bad will happen. He raises his hand and starts making gestures on his neck. He continues making these gestures, but the woman doesn't understand anything until she starts laughing, asking if all demi-humans are jokesters like him. Fuji can't believe this, and asks her if she's not afraid of demi-humans. The woman responds that of course not. After all, there's a cat woman who lives next to the Lord, and she doesn't seem scary at all. The boy is surprised to hear this, thinking this cat woman must be his second sister. He then jumps out of bed and grabs the woman's hand, asking what this cat woman looks like. Laner explains that this girl has long violet hair, big round eyes, and is very beautiful. This makes Fuji think, as it is definitely Mina, so he needs to return to the cave and inform his group. At this moment, something catches his attention. He is still holding the woman's hand. He pulls away, realizing he touched a woman's hand, but thinks she isn't afraid of him anyway. Without wasting time, he grabs his bag of wheat and his turban and crashes into the wall, running out of the house with a huge bump on his head. The woman just wonders why on earth the boy didn't jump out the window instead of destroying the wall. He finally reaches the cave and quickly informs his group that he infiltrated the city, making the girl as furious as a dragon. Ellie asks how he could do such a ridiculous thing. She becomes extremely angry, asking how he could be so stupid as to be discovered so easily. It would have been easier if he had just gone straight to prison and surrendered there. He feels sad about all of this, but says that at least he found out where Mina is. This catches Ellie's attention, and she starts shaking the boy, asking where this place is. Fuji gets completely dizzy from being shaken so many times until he finally says that Mina is in the city of Yang. He falls to the ground, saying that Mina was kidnapped by the city's lord, a person named Liu Feng. She gets a terrifying look in her eyes while thinking about the name Liu Feng from the city of Yang. Night falls in the city, and Fuji is walking slowly. He led Ellie to the city so the two could infiltrate it. The girl can only think about her friend Mina and that she should wait for her. They jump across the houses, imagining they will finally reunite. The group hides near the castle. She figures it was expected that there would be guards around, so she raises her hand, saying they will proceed as planned. At this moment, one of the soldiers goes to urinate near the bushes. The demi-human stands up and quickly attacks the soldier. Fuji lands a solid punch to a man's face, while another demi-human delivers a precise kick. The pink-haired demi-human girl shouts and jumps on two soldiers at the same time. Ellie smiles, thinking the objective is almost complete. She then looks at Fuji and says he is too slow and definitely needs more training. Immediately, she starts jumping to the top of the castle, while the boy says that no matter how much Ellie tries to hide it, she is happy to finally reunite with Mina. The night remains calm, and the protagonist is laughing out loud while reading a manhwa. He grabs a bun in his hand and starts eating. At this moment, Fuji and Ellie leap, breaking through one of the castles by the view, but still wondering who that girl is. The two fall to the ground and then turn to Liu Feng, pointing their weapons. Fuji, furious, shouts, asking him to release his sister. However, the two are so clueless that they are aiming in the wrong direction. Liu Feng, puzzled, asks who they are. The boy notices the presence of the Lord, turns, and quickly runs towards him to attack, demanding that the stupid human, but someone approaches at high speed. It was Mina, who defends the blow with a dagger as well. The two look at each other in disbelief that they are finally reunited. Ellie is also embarrassed, asking if it is really Mina who is there. At this moment, Fuji drops his dagger on the ground and grabs his sister's legs, crying a lot and saying he finally found her. The protagonist says he finally understands. Apparently, Mina is his sister. The boy gets up and tells Liu Feng that he will die for imprisoning Mina. He runs towards the protagonist, covering. The protagonist wonders why people there like to kill so much. Ellie hears that Mina is recovering from something and starts running towards her, jumping to hug her. She asks Mina if she is really injured and starts crying because she was so worried. Mina smiles and places her hand on her friend's hair, asking her not to worry, that nothing serious happened. She takes the opportunity to ask why they are at the castle. After all, the order was for everyone to go south. Ellie responds that she really wasn't worried, but Fuji insisted so much on saving his sister that she had no other choice. The boy can't believe the absurdity he is hearing. At this moment, Liu Feng is amazed by what he is seeing. He looks at the new girl's ears and also at the swaying tail and says that she is definitely a fox demi-human. His eyes shine brightly, finding it incredible. He says that if everyone there is friends with Mina, then they are also his guests, so everyone can sit and make themselves comfortable. Ellie asks Mina if that human hurt her, and she responds that he doesn't have the skill to do so. The protagonist can't believe they're calling him weak to his face. Ellie doesn't waste time and grabs Mina's hand, asking them to leave quickly, as many people are waiting for her so they can head south. Mina turns to look at Liu Feng, then looks forward and starts walking with her friends. At this moment, he shouts for them to wait. Ellie turns, shouting, asking what he wants. He says that Mina isn't fully recovered and asks them to wait for a few days. She responds that he doesn't need to worry about her. The protagonist explains that nobles are hunting demi-humans even in the south, so she might not be safe there. Ellie gets stressed with that nonsense. He continues, embarrassed, trying to find an excuse for her to stay. Mina is also embarrassed, remembering that Liu Feng provided her with food when she was injured. He also gave her a warm bath and clean clothes. Despite all the difficulties, they had a lot of fun together. Mina doesn't know what to do and tells Ellie that she decides. The protagonist starts to worry about the direction of the conversation. At this moment, a loud noise comes from behind them. Everyone turns, asking what that loud noise was. It was Fuji's stomach growling loudly because he was starving. Liu Feng looks to the side and has a brilliant idea. He prepares tomato and egg rice and asks all the demi-humans to feel free to eat. Everyone starts drooling, as the food looks wonderful. Ellie takes a spoonful and stares at it for a moment, then decides to take a bite. As she bites into the food, she feels a strong sensation. Her ears start to twitch, making her feel like a fox wandering through a tomato field. She is extremely happy and full after eating all that food. She shakes her head in disbelief, thinking Liu Feng is incredible for making such delicious food. She starts shouting, asking what her colleagues are doing. While Fuji is licking his plate, the other two are licking the pot the food was made in. They respond that apparently the rice is all gone because they can't find anything left in the pot. Outside, the full moon is shining brightly. Mina is looking up, thoughtful. Liu Feng knocks on the door and steps out onto the balcony as well, saying he looked for Mina everywhere, but it seems she was out there. He approaches her and says she's brave to leave him alone with her friends. After all, He could have poisoned them. Mina turns and says she dares him to do it. He laughs, saying he wouldn't be capable of such a thing. She bursts out laughing, knowing it's true. They both look forward again, and under the moonlight, the protagonist asks if she's really going south. Mina responds that yes, she doesn't have much choice. She further explains that the Winter Queen will soon arrive, and there won't be any food for them. So how will they survive? He says the south is too far, and until they get there, they'll have to pass through many dangerous cities. And to make matters worse, they don't even know the current situation in the south. He then asks Mina to stay in the city of Yang. She feels embarrassed upon hearing this, and asks what they'll eat if they stay there. After all, they can't depend on the protagonist forever. He smiles, as it seems she's changing her mind, and suggests that her friends work for him so they can have plenty of food. She says that in addition, they'll have to live with humans. He smiles and says that won't be a problem. Besides, she's very skilled, so she can do other kinds of work. Mina asks why he's being so kind to them. The protagonist, looking at the sky, responds that the reason is obvious. He says it's because he doesn't want to be away from her. Hearing this makes Mina extremely, but they've been together for a long time, so she knows him well enough. He turns and asks, please, for her to stay. The two exchange looks, and Mina turns her face away, feeling very embarrassed. However, she turns